Hi, welcome to my presentation on citrus cultivation, planting, and pruning. Thanks to Andrea Kawabata for inviting me to speak as part of her Coffee and Orchard Crops webinar series this year. My name is Neumann, and I'm the owner of Lokoea Farms. We have a family-run farm in Haleiwa, grow about 8 acres of citrus and different tropical fruits. Some photos of our beautiful farm. Our land for many, many years was sugar plantation until we started the farm. My dad started the farm around 2000. So just like many of you who are on former sugar land, we are always trying to improve the soil. Here's a drone picture of the farm. You can see our various fields. Orange field, I'm sorry, the blue lines are mostly the orange field. The black is our Meyer lemon field, and the red is a variety of citrus and tropical fruit. So citrus is something that I think should probably be grown more. I keep looking for a more updated slide of this, but it still seems like 2016 is the most recent one. It's 10 years ago now, but it's probably still pretty similar that out of all the different produce commodities that are imported, oranges are up there, number one. So obviously oranges are something that's in demand here in Hawaii and it grows well here. But why is it not being cultivated more? Since this came out, there is a newish citrus farm in Maui called Mahipono that does grow quite a bit of citrus, but again, they are still not growing very many oranges, if any. It's mostly limes and mandarins. Citrus is a funny family. They crossbreed really freely. So if you planted seeds from a delicious citrus fruit that you ate, you may or may not get something that is the same when you grow that tree out. They're very rarely true to seed because they crossbreed so easily. Even in clones, like grafted trees, you can still get bud mutations or different types of branch mutations or even fruit mutations. Because of this genetic variation and because Hawaii has such climatic variation, it's really hard to tell you what's going to grow well in your neighborhood or in your farm. The best thing to do is to keep your eyes open and watch what your neighbors do. But that said, there are some sort of tried and true varieties that are generally what you will be able to get here in Hawaii that most of the nurseries, the local nurseries grow. Sweet oranges, such as Navel and Valencia, and here's a few different kinds of Navel and Valencia oranges. I grow all of these, and I think that they all are suited well to our climate. Tangerines and mandarins is a huge, subfamily. There are so many different named cultivars, and they are quite different, and you could even put satsumas in here and some other things as well. Limes, the most common type is Tahitian, which seems to bear the best in our climate. And then lemons, again, the most common is Meyer, and that also seems to bear the best in our climate. Grapefruit, there's a few different kinds. There's Ruby, Ruby Red, Rio Ruby, Flame, those are all red types. Oro Blanco is a cross between a pomelo and a white grapefruit, very sweet. But I've had quite a few different grapefruit and they all seem to be pretty vigorous and pretty happy here. And maybe that could be because they are more closely related to pomelo and jabong, which is very happy here. I'm sure you guys have all seen the huge jabong trees driving around different older neighborhoods. But people tend to like the pink types better, although some of the white ones are also very good. Chandler is an excellent variety of pomelo. Okay, so let's talk about planting citrus. The ideal planting location would probably be full sun, but especially when the tree is young, it wants a little bit of sun and wind protection. So putting up some kind of cage, like a temporary cage like this would be good if you don't have other trees in the area, like if it was an open field. Very important is they don't like standing water, so you want to have good drainage. Although they are not as picky about that as avocado and some other trees are. They can tolerate some degree of um, you know standing water for a short period of time. Uh, and also, I've found that compared to a lot of other tropical fruit, citrus are a lot less picky. If you don't do all of these things, they will probably still fruit. They just might take a little longer and might not be as much fruit. So I think sometimes people get frozen in their trying to figure out the best place to plant the trees, but sometimes you just got to get it in the ground. Okay. That said, you do want to plan out your orchards before you start planting. So there's kind of two main types that you could consider. A traditional citrus orchard would be like 24 feet between rows and then like 10 to 15 feet in row, um, to allow for standard size citrus trees, which can get pretty big. Those are, I guess, they're generally for people that are going to be using more machinery to prune, to harvest, to weed, or to cultivate the soil. And it's kind of overkill, in my opinion, if you're like most farms in Hawaii where you're doing a lot of work by hand or smaller machines. Um, Having a traditional orchard, though, is a little more hands off and it's cheaper to start because you have less trees in the beginning. But it also takes longer to yield. So the other option is high density. So I do mine generally like this, about 8 foot uh, in row and then 20 foot. And sometimes I even push it to 15 feet between rows. I do recommend, if you're going to go that close, though, to make sure to have rows that you have specifically for driving through, because they are heavy fruit and you're going to want to drive when you're harvesting later on once the trees are big. And if you go 15 foot between rows, you're not going to have space to drive a tractor or a car or a truck in there. High density, you'd probably want to do dwarf varieties. You'll have to keep them nicely pruned in order to fit through the rows. They'll cost more in the beginning because there's more trees, but you will get quicker yields because, again, because you have more trees. Tree selection. The two big ways to get trees here in Hawaii are from either Planted Hawaii on the Big Island. You can order pallets of trees. They generally have citrus in stock pretty well. I want to say it's like 40 trees per pallet. And they are pretty large trees. They're like 1 to 2 years after grafting. So they'd be fruiting in a couple years, maybe 3 years. They are, pretty much ready to put in the ground the day that you pick them up at the dock. And they don't have the hugest selection, but the stuff they do have has been grown in Hawaii over and over and over. So you should be able to find data on, how it grows. The other option is to grow your own from what they call liners, from a nursery in California called Citrus Tree Source. And they have an amazing variety of citrus, so much that it's sometimes hard to pick because you're like, I don't know, is this one going to do well here? Is it going to require chill hours or something like that? But if you know what you're looking for, it's nice to have that variety. You can order, they will specifically graft trees for you. I think that you have to order at least 100. And then they will do any variety that you like. Takes a few months to a year, depending what time of year you're trying to get them. They usually send them out in the spring. But they come as little tiny citrus liners, little tiny trees, 120 trees to a box, and they're not bare rooted, but they are they don't come in pots. They come in wrapped in plastic bags. You need to immediately transplant them into tree pots or some kind of good pot where they can live for a year and a half. A year to two, in a greenhouse. And you need to train them. You need to put a stake in there and make sure that you're keeping an eye on their growth, protect them from any pest, and take care of them for 1 to 2 years. And then after that time, you'll have a tree that looks pretty much like the Planted Hawaii ones. So they are cheap. I want to say they're like $7 or $8 each, but they take a long time. So it's really, what do you have the space and time and money for? So when you got your trees and you're ready to plant them, first thing you got to do is do a soil analysis. So, get your soil tested, work with the extension agents, and figure out what your soil needs are going to be and what kind of fertilizer you're going to apply specifically for your citrus trees. I could do a whole presentation on fertilizing for citrus, so I'm going to stop there, but definitely something to consider. Before you plant, you want to deal with the weeds. So the best way to do that is to flush them, get rid of them a few times. You could either do a cultivation using a tarp to kill them, and then take the tarp off, water, let them sprout, cover it up with tarp again, let them die, take it off, sprout them again, and do this a few times so you can really get the weeds down in the soil. You can also do it with herbicide if you prefer. And I guess before you do the weeds removal, you'd want to do your plowing and ripping. But if you're just gonna dig holes, you can probably do it after. Usually, I like to say like 3 feet wide and 2 feet deep for each tree, but it really depends on the size of your tree when you're putting it in the ground. So go ahead and plant the tree. If it is root bound, you want to loosen and cut the exterior roots so that it will just start growing. Put it in the hole, tap it down around the tree, and make sure that the ground line of the tree should be an inch or two above the natural surface, because it's going to sink down and you really don't want your citrus sitting in a puddle. Make sure that top 1 inch or 2 inches is natural soil, like if it's clay soil or whatever, because if you let it be the pot media, like your potting soil, it dries out really quickly, and it will dry out all the way down to the bottom of the roots. So make sure you cover it up with natural soil up at the top. Water it often, especially at first, because it doesn't have a very large root ball yet. Make sure that it's wet inside where your tree's roots are, not just their surrounding soil. And very important is mulch. You can use whatever kind of mulch you want, as long as it's organic matter. I just use the free tree trimmer mulch that we get from, tree trimmer guys come dump it at the farm. And when you're applying the mulch under the trees, you want to make kind of like a big donut around the tree. Leave like a good 6 inches on each side of the trunk open so that you don't have wet mulch right up against the tree trunk, rotting it out. You definitely don't want a volcano, if you can picture that, like a real deep mulch right around the trunk. You want to kind of make it look more like a donut, if you can picture that. And think about maybe some kind of wind protection if it's a big open field. So irrigation definitely depends. There are so many microclimates here in Hawaii, it's hard to say. But overall, citrus are thirsty trees. They like a lot of water. They like way more water than avocado and mango. They don't want to be sitting in water, and it would be good to dry them out slightly between waterings, but having the soil get bone dry can be stressful for them. If you have the means to irrigate more often, then I recommend you do that. Although some people prefer to encourage a deeper root growth by stressing them a little and stretching out between waterings. But it really depends on what kind of water you have access to, and that's gonna kind of make that decision for you. For me at Lokoea Farms, we get like 30 inches of rain a year in Haleiwa, but pretty much all of it is in the winter. It's actually raining right now in January. But in the summertime, we irrigate a lot. We have micro sprinklers, which is, little sprinklers. The baby trees get one and they get bigger. Sometimes we put 2 of them in. In the summer, we give like 18 to 30 gallons per tree every 2 to 3 days. So it's a lot of water that we're putting down in there. But right now in the winter, when it's raining all the time, my irrigation system's off and there's plenty of water out in the fields. But having that mulch really helps keep everything kind of level. So it doesn't allow it to get super wet and super dry and super wet. It sort of just keeps it moist all the time. And as soon as you plant your tree, you should be spending time observing it. You want to feel the soil, feel the surface, but also dig down to where the roots are. Keep an eye on the trees, look for signs of water stress, and you won't know what they are until you start to see them. But this is a picture of some water stress. You see how the leaves are kind of curling and they look sort of like lighter colored, just kind of dried out looking. In really serious cases, they'll turn yellow and the leaves will start to drop, the fruit will drop. However, under and overwatered trees can look really similar. I had a spot on the farm where some Meyer lemons were getting flooded, and they weren't. It just, there was no drainage there, and they were getting too much water, and the tree in the worst part of it started looking a lot like this. And then it dropped all the fruit, and then it died, and pretty sure it just drowned. Um, but it was kind of amazing how the leaves looked really similar to when they're underwatered. Okay, let's talk about pruning now. So there's a few reasons why you might prune citrus. I have them listed here, but you want to allow more light in, which can help to eliminate pests. It can also help to have higher quality fruit. You don't want your branches to be breaking or scratching against each other, so you want to remove extra branches and make sure that you have a nice skeleton or a nice scaffold. Take out dead stuff to make sure that you're not getting diseases and things like that. You want to be able to reach every part of your tree when you're spraying for pests or for fertilizer. You want air circulation and access into the trees, especially if you spray herbicide in your orchard. You need to be able to spray herbicide without, damaging your trees. You may want to reduce the tree height or width. Less fruit means larger fruit. So if you cut your tree down, you prune it down to a smaller size, then you will have less fruiting wood, but the fruit will probably be larger because you are not changing the root ball. Less fruit also means it's less likely to be rubbing against the bark or rubbing against each other, so the quality of the fruit will be better. And often, especially with young citrus trees, you are pruning to keep the fruit off the ground, but you also pruning to keep the fruit from being too high so you can make your harvest easier. Most trees kind of use this same similar kind of pruning basics, like open center pruning or vase pruning. You want to open up the center because it allows that sunlight and airflow and all your pesticides or whatever into the canopy. I generally try to hit every tree on the farm once a year, and it could be something, very small pruning, or it could be a pretty large pruning, but the best time is immediately after the largest harvest. With citrus, a lot of times we get multiple harvests a year, or we may have like a few months, which is our harvest period, and then you might take a couple months off and then another few months harvesting. So it's hard to say exactly when is the best time to prune. It really depends on your tree. And there's nothing wrong with doing small amounts of pruning throughout the year. Sometimes that actually is easier because when you do a large pruning on citrus, they tend to bounce back and then they shoot out a ton of new growth right away. So sometimes smaller prunings more often can actually make the job a little bit easier. Some basic, just general arborist pruning tips. You kind of want to cut above a healthy side branch. Pinch out terminal tips stimulates the area below it to grow. And if you want to thin it, you would cut the stem back to the main branch, although you always want to leave that collar so that the tree can heal itself. But with citrus especially, it's super forgiving, so don't be afraid. Just get in there and start cutting, and pay attention to what the tree does when you cut in different areas. Some areas may be very slow to heal, or some types of cuts, if you leave a stub, for example, you may be more prone to getting disease later. You want to make sure to have nice, clean cuts. You don't want jagged, broken things. You want to make it easy for the trees to heal up if you're doing larger branches. Smaller branches, you can do pretty much whatever you want. The tree will deal with it. Lemons, limes, grapefruits, they're so vigorous. You can't really go wrong. Just start cutting. A lot of times, especially if you prune out a lot of growth right before you fertilize or water, you will see a lot of regrowth, like witch's broom type of things on younger trees especially, where you would get like a whole bunch of new little shoots coming out at the same spot where you cut it. And when you see that kind of thing, you just remove out most of them, leave two or three of the best ones. A lot of people say to remove water sprouts, which are those funny branches that just like grow straight up super fast. Like you don't look at it for a week and then suddenly there's this huge branch coming out that goes all way above all the other branches. And the reason that a lot of times they tell you to remove those, and on a mature tree, I would say that's probably a good idea. But on younger trees, there's nothing wrong with leaving those, but you do want to kind of, bend them over or cut them back or keep an eye on them so that they don't become your main trunk and make your scaffold all weird. I find that the water sprouts on younger trees tend to fruit, they flower and fruit, and then they end up getting so much fruit on them that they bend themselves back over to kind of create that umbrella shape that you see in mature trees. Um, but you got to watch out because a lot of times they'll fruit so heavily you end up breaking branches, and then your scaffold is kind of messed up. All right, in a nutshell, that's citrus planting and pruning. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me. I'm happy to talk story about citrus. And again, thanks to Andrea and the extension agents for holding these workshops.